Welcome to our week when we're focusing mostly on justice, and in this case, of course, distributive justice. Um, Distributive justice are normative principles designed to guide the allocation of the benefits and burdens of economic activity in order to achieve some acceptable level of fairness and equity in a society or in a community. And the mode of reasoning analogy, which we've used all along to help you kind of get an immediate grasp of a concept, in this case it's kind of a lifeboat exercise. Distributive justice has put us in a situation where there are a group of people who have limited resources. How do those limited resources get distributed? And a lifeboat exercise, probably most of you have had the experience of a lifeboat exercise at one point or another, and know that you're thrown together in the lifeboat and you have to decide, who stays in the lifeboat and who goes overboard, because the lifeboat's going to sink if everyone stays. So it's this, we have limited resources, and that limited resource is the lifeboat itself, or in some cases it's how much food is on the lifeboat or how much water is in the lifeboat, and we can supply water or food for only 10 people and there are 15. So who has to go overboard, who has to be sacrificed, that sort of thing. Distributive justice is saying society makes these decisions all the time. Whether they're making those decisions consciously or not, these decisions are being made. There are winners and losers in society, and therefore appropriate principles have to be applied here. It can't just be arbitrary or willy-nilly, or who's got the most money or something like that is a very arbitrary standard according to most theories of distributive justice. So it's an attempt to create a more stable and a more substantial set of principles. There are a number of theories of distributive justice, and in your reading for today, you read about 6 or 7 of those. I'm going to quickly kind of remind you of each one of those theories, and then I'm going to go much deeper into one of those theories, which wasn't really well described in your reading. It's not very thorough, and it deserves to have a much more thorough treatment. First of all, there's strict egalitarianism, a very simple kind of distributive justice principle, which states that every person should have the same level of material goods and services. It's merely taking all the resources in society and divvying it up according to the number of people in society. So if we have 10 apples and 10 people, everybody gets an apple. If we have 5 apples and 10 people, everybody gets half an apple kind of distribution. Strict egalitarianism. Resource egalitarianism is similar, of course, the use of the term egalitarianism, but in resource egalitarianism, it's really focused on the starting point. The starting point is equal. However, the outcomes are determined by the free use of the resources. Therefore, everyone isn't assured equal resources throughout their lifetime or throughout the time period in which we're doing this analysis. So it's the kind of theory that suggests, well, at some point in a person's life, everyone gets the same resources, the same education, the same amount of food, clothing, shelter, same number of opportunities in regards to jobs, the same kind of training, etc., and so forth. But once everyone has gotten this set of resources, whatever they may be, then it's really up to them to do with those resources what they will. And if they squander those resources, oops, oh well. It's not up to the society then to step in and give them more resources. That would be unfair. If the person, applies themselves and does something very good with those resources, and well, then good for them. That's how resource egalitarian works. We all begin with an equal set of resources. What we do with them is up to us. Utilitarianism, something we've really already discussed, is discussed in our reading under the idea of welfare principle. And it's really utilitarianism. One must choose the option that maximizes the overall utility or welfare. It's not strict utilitarianism, egalitarianism. Utilitarianism simply says that we have to produce the greatest good for the greatest number. That may not be exactly giving 10 apples to 10 people. It may be that two of the people in that group of 10 are in greater need and should get more than one apple. They could get one apple and a quarter of another apple, and that there are others in the group who don't need quite as much, and it's those people will take a little bit of their apple and give it to the people who need more. In any case, a utilitarian analysis is a bit more complex than simply strict egalitarianism, which is a bit more simplistic in its focus of distribution. Desert-based principles suggest that people should be rewarded for their work activity according to the value of their contribution to the social product. In other words, people should be rewarded, and the resources of society should be distributed according to a person's contribution to that society. So if a person is contributing a whole lot to society, that person should receive a greater share of the resources in that society than others, and should certainly receive even more than those who aren't really contributing much at all. So it's this desert-based principle which seems fair, because at some level there will always be people who contribute more and those who contribute less to the thriving and development of a society. Libertarianism is a distribution that says everyone is entitled to the holdings they possess under the laws of that distribution. Libertarianism is saying that, people deserve what they have if they have acquired what they have according to the laws and the rules of that society. As long as they haven't cheated someone out of something, as long as they haven't stolen something, as long as they aren't more or less taking something from someone else, or depriving people of something, then they deserve to have it, even if what they have is much more than everyone else. Even if what they have seems disproportionately large in comparison to what everyone else or what someone else in that society has. Finally, there's Rawls' theory of justice, which is discussed under the heading of the difference principle in your reading. And it's this one that I want to talk about more, because in your reading it gives a couple of paragraphs, but it doesn't give you a really good idea of what Rawls' the full-blown theory of justice had to say about distributive justice. And I'm not saying Rawls per se has the most important voice here. His is a fairly complex one that just needs a little more explanation. Rawls' theory of justice begins with this idea of the original position. And in the original position, a group of people come together for the purpose of deciding on the ground rules for their society. And economic distribution is the normal focus of the theory. I want to begin here by saying that the original position, and really all of Rawls' theory, is a thought experiment. We've run into thought experiments before when we talked about Kant and Kant's third formulation of the categorical imperative, where he was asking us to do this thought experiment about the kingdom of ends. where we kind of magically transform ourselves or transport ourselves into a world where everyone treats each other as an end unto themselves. It's kind of a morally perfect universe. In a similar way, Rawls wants us to do a thought experiment here. The truth is, we're never going to get a group of people to come together for the purpose of deciding on the ground rules of society, with economic distribution as the normal focus. There isn't this kind of group of people who are ever going to do this. And, as we go through the various aspects of the original position, you'll begin to see that this is a thought experiment. It's not actually something that is implementable in a real world. It's a group that's aware of other attempts to write constitutions and regulate economic distribution. In other words, the people who are coming together aren't coming together as ignoramuses, as people who don't really know anything about any other society. They're really coming together with actually quite a bit of knowledge of history, of political science, theories of social construction, philosophy, and other ideas. So they're bringing a lot of ideas to the table. It's kind of a well-educated group, is the assumption. But otherwise, they begin with this clean slate. Again, you have to think of this as a thought experiment, because what happens when you enter the room in the original position is you sort of have this amnesia moment where you've forgotten who and what you were before. So if you were the mayor of the city, walking into the room, once you're in that room, you're no longer the mayor of the city, and you no longer carry any of the baggage that was associated with that role. If you were the garbage man, let's say, same thing. You were garbage person before entering the room. Once you're in the room, the baggage associated with that role that you did play in society is now gone, and you start with a clean slate. And you're standing behind what Rawls called the veil of ignorance. No one knows, no one in the group knows what role you'll play in the new society. So the whole clean slate idea and the veil of ignorance, more or less, is this idea that you come into the room and you forget what you were, and you don't know what you're going to become. You don't know what you were in the old society, you don't know what you will become in the new one. That's, again, why it's a thought experiment. This whole idea of clean slate, veil of ignorance.